Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Nashoba Valley Chamber. We're very honored to have U.S. Senator Markey with us this morning. I'm going to turn it over to Wally Dwyer. Wally is our past chairman of our board of directors and the president of Main Street Bank, our premier sponsor. Wally.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you, Senator, for joining us today. Thanks all of you for participating. There's interesting times and certainly a lot we can learn. U.S. Senator Ed Markey is a national leader on climate, clean energy, and the environment. He serves as chair of the Senate Climate Task Force and on the Environment and Public Works Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, and the Foreign Relations Committee. These key leadership positions, earned over 40 years of legislative work, establish him as a powerful leader both nationally and internationally on climate and energy policy. His record of legislative achievements is unparalleled. Since January, Ed Markey has led efforts in the Senate in calling for protections for frontline workers during the coronavirus pandemic, demanding the Trump administration provide all essential workers the personal protective equipment they need. He is a co-sponsor of legislation to eliminate all out-of-pocket health expenses for every person in the United States during the pandemic. Ed Markey also joined Senate colleagues in calling for a national fund to provide compensation to essential workers impacted by the coronavirus crisis, including providing student debt relief for public servants, many of whom are playing central roles in the coronavirus response. While serving for 37 years in the U.S. House of Representatives, Ed Markey fought for his constituents throughout his congressional district before being elected to the Senate in a special election of June of 2013. Again, thank you so much, Senator Markey. We'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much, Wally, for inviting me. We're clearly moved into a brand new era, and Zoom has become a word. It's like Oreos or Q-tips. It's going to be with us forever as a part of our lives. We know that we're never fully going back to the old world. So, so I thank you for inviting me to talk to you today and have a conversation with you about what is going on in Washington and what I think has to happen if we're going to be successful in coming out of this pandemic and the pandemic induced, potential depression that we are facing. So, so we thank you for all you're doing for your community. We thank the first responders. We thank the essential workers who are out there making it possible for us to be home and not out and exposed to the coronavirus. So let's just continue to do that so that we're protecting each and every one of those individuals. So we're in a time period right now where in Congress we've been able to pass several bills thus far in order to provide funding for small businesses. We've been able to set aside additional funding for minority and smaller businesses, the smallest of the small businesses, for women-owned businesses, which is absolutely essential. We don't want them to be left behind because larger small businesses may have the accountants, the lawyers to be able to qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program because we know along Main Street so many of the ordinary businesses just don't have those resources. So it's absolutely imperative that we continue in that direction. We were able to put together an unemployment program for $600 a week in order to help out individuals, and we added in a gig economy benefit for those who might not ordinarily be covered by unemployment insurance, so that whether it be Uber driver or just independent contractors, that they're able to also get the $600, which they would need on top of the unemployment check, which they might qualify for. But again, many of these workers did not qualify. We put in $12 billion for universities. About $270 million of that went to Massachusetts in order to help to keep them afloat. We tried our best to help out the hospitals. We put $150 billion in the first bill for hospitals and community health centers, but then we had to come back in a second bill and add $75 billion more. Now, honestly, the Republicans didn't want to add the additional $75 billion, but it's absolutely necessary. The hospitals are hemorrhaging money, and we have to keep the funding going into those hospitals. So ultimately, they relented. The same thing was true for testing. That is the Democrats, we added $25 billion for testing. The Republicans did not want the $25 billion for testing. Again, we just held for an additional week, and they relented, and so that $25 billion is in for testing. We really do seriously believe this has to be national in scope. The resources have to be there if we're going to build confidence in our economy, so that people are able to feel that they can get back into the workforce, back to school. And the House just passed something called the HEROES bill, which is an additional $3 trillion. The last big bill was $2.2 trillion. This one is $3 trillion, and it deals with the reality that the cities and towns across our country they're hemorrhaging money. So that bill adds $850 billion to help cities and towns and states deal with their budgets. Otherwise, there could be massive layoffs of teachers, of fire, of police, of healthcare workers, food programs dramatically cut back. And that's just the opposite of what we really want at this time. So many of these people are the frontline workers. This is not the time to be laying them all off. They are absolutely essential to recovery. In addition, the legislation extends out the unemployment insurance benefit out until December 31st this year, which is more realistic in terms of trying to gauge and deal with the magnitude of the economic crisis that we are facing right now. It adds more money for hospitals. It adds more money for food programs. There's a food crisis that has opened up in every city and town across the country. People are desperate. People who never needed any food assistance in the past are now desperate to get any help that they can get. So we absolutely have to provide that additional funding for the food crisis in our country as well. And so on and on, as you think about this, the crisis is real. It's getting deeper. And we have to make sure that we provide the help which families need, but we also have to provide the federal funding that's going into our economy to keep it afloat. If we just pull out, not have this federal funding go in, then it's only going to deepen this recession, turn it into a depression, and make it all the more hard for us to truly come out. Because I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So much of this is about consumer confidence. It's about making people feel that they can come back into the marketplace. And so much of that is just dependent upon the funding for the hospitals, the funding for testing, the testing for contact tracing, the testing for more personal protective equipment, so that it's out there in our economy, and people then slowly but surely get the confidence that they can go back out into the marketplace. So that's my feeling, that's my philosophy, that it's up to the federal government to provide that funding, especially since the states and localities are going to be hemorrhaging revenues. So if it would be okay with you, Wally, I can just stop right there and answer questions that may be coming in from other members of the chamber.
Melissa, thank you very much, and thank you, Senator, for taking my question. Melissa, would you just read it out for me?
Absolutely. All right. As a small business owner in a non-essential marketing sector who has just been allowed to open last week, Lillian has the chance of clawing back her business slowly. She's following all recommended protocols to reopen. One lawsuit from one employee attempting to hold her company liable for contacting COVID-19 would kill her chance of short-term or long-term recovery. What legislation can you support to give business owners sweeping protection from liability related to COVID-19, and how quickly can it come? And I should note that Lillian is with Burkhart Flutes in Piccolos, located in Shirley.
So that's a great question, and it's clearly something that we're going to have to be discussing as we have moved forward on the next package. And so, if you could, are you there, Lillian? I'd love to hear your comments about this issue and what its impact on you can be.
Yes, Senator, the concerns are, as I think all of us small business owners are grasping to follow legislation, understand rules and regulations. We are all expecting and anticipating an extraordinary amount of litigation following this crisis. And the fears and ability of a small business like mine to put forth a defense in an area that is just so beyond our control is really quite frightening and paralyzing.
Okay, good. Well, that's a great question, and so I'm. And what would you like? What would be your proposal in terms of what legislation should look like?
What it could look like for us is protection against the liability of contracting the disease as a result of returning to work, as a result of our efforts to get that economy stimulated by putting my people back to work. I have been very fortunate to have the access to the PPP loans, was able to put people back on payroll, even though we were closed for an additional 3 weeks after my loan came through. And people, my employees, are very genuinely interested in being at work, but they're concerned for their families, what they may bring home to themselves and to their families as a result of being in my workspace. So legislation, as I envision it, to protect us against specifically the liability exposure as a result of returning my people to work.
Okay, well, it's an excellent question, and so I'm going to have to take a look at that, study it, understand, the parameters and what would be covered. Would you want it to cover any circumstance? Would it exclude gross negligence, or how would you see that standard being constructed?
Gross negligence. Certainly I can attest that I don't see among my manufacturing colleagues, business owners, CEOs of similar companies exercising negligence at all. There's a genuine effort to put forth what we can do and follow the rules. However, people will still contract this virus and possibly contract this virus in my workspace.
Okay. All right. So you've given me an assignment now. I have to now take this under advisement to kind of determine what would be the right course of action here, and where the parameters might be in terms of
where the parameters would. Thank you, sir.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you, Lillian, very much.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Nick Thornton. Nick is with the Boy Scouts of America in the Lancaster office.
Hi, Senator. Nick Thornton. I'm with the local Boy Scouts here. I'm the Director of Development. And, in the past, you've been a strong advocate of environmental protections throughout the country. How can you help protect the national parks from pipelines and loosening EPA standards under the current government?
Can you just restate that question a little bit? I'm sorry.
Yeah. How can you help protect our national parks and from pipelines and loosening EPA standards? What are we? How are we pushing that forward? Because that seems to be a big thing. Is some of the Clean Water Acts and things like that are under attack, and and so I would want to make sure that this America the Beautiful is there for my daughter, who's 3, that I grew up with.
No, thank you, Nick, very much. Yeah, that's a very good point. So under this Department of Interior, the Donald Trump Department of Interior, they've kind of cast caution to the wind in terms of protecting the environment. We really don't need pipelines going through national parks in our country in a way that despoils this treasure, which should be passed on generation to generation to generation. Instead, we should be talking in terms of a massive clean energy revolution where we create millions of jobs in the clean energy sector, so that it's wind and it's all electric vehicles, it's solar, it's battery storage technologies. We can create millions of jobs doing that so that we can avoid the necessity of having these pipelines have to be constructed. And, as you're pointing out, this administration just doesn't care. So we put 70% of all the oil that we consume in the United States into gasoline tanks. And so right now, Donald Trump is rolling back the fuel economy standards. And I'm the author of the 2007 law that President Obama used to increase fuel economy standards to 54.5 miles per gallon. That's pretty much where Elon Musk came from, because now the mandate is so high, 54.5 miles per gallon, that the all-electric vehicle, became a much more attractive option. So what we have to do, rather than saying we need more pipelines, we have to say we need more fuel economy standards, so that we need less and less and less oil. If they just, continue to implement, which Trump is not, he's trying to roll back the standard, the proposal which Obama put on the books, that backs out 3 million barrels of oil a day. So that just dramatically reduces the number of pipelines, the amount of oil that has to go through it, the risk that we would have to run to have that oil in pristine natural park areas across the country. So I think from our perspective in Massachusetts, we're an innovation state. We know we can do this. We know we can have a clean energy revolution. We know that's where the jobs are. It's now in the top 10 sectors of employment in Massachusetts, clean energy jobs. It's a huge source of employment for many people, and that's much more preferably the direction I want to go in, and why I'm running for re-election, and why I think Joe Biden should be the president. So thank you, Nick, very much for that question.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you again. And our next question is from Wally, who you've heard from. Wally, I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, Melissa. Senator, as Melissa mentioned, I run a community bank here in the Nashoba Valley, and I am very, very much appreciative of what you and the entire federal government has been doing, because I share your concerns about the economy and where we're going without some of that fiscal stimulus. My specific question, though, has to do with the PPP process. My bank did probably 500 loans. Hopefully I'm still on here. Yes, there we go. So actually we did more than that. We did 500, close to 600 loans, probably $70 million. I had teams of people working night and day to get through the application process. I understand the challenges that the SBA had to deal with. I am terrified, as are most of my customers, about the forgiveness process. We had absolute nightmares getting through the 2-page application. And now I see 26 pages of guidance with multiple forms. I've heard of one competitor bank telling all of their customers to have their accountants prepare this stuff at significant cost. I know I might have the record personally for the smallest PPP loan. I did one for $346.25.
Who got that one? Who got that one, Wally?
I'm not sure if I should tell you, but it's the airport diner in Shirley.
Uh-huh.
And it was, because of the way it all worked, it was that was the best we could do. They made whatever, 11 or 1,200 bucks, and you take that, divide it by 12, multiply it times 2.5. And I said, geez, I hate to tell you, but this is what the number is. And she said, anything will help. So we did it. Now I fear that, these same hardworking people, one of my best friends, Senator, is a dairy farmer. And when we were worried about the window closing down, the first time, I said, Charlie, you got to get this application in. He says, I'm working like 75 hours a week. When do I have time to sit down and, round up this paperwork? And that was for that 2-page application. So again, I know you can't do this yourself. I will speak to anybody who's listening, but whatever we can do to simplify that process for our, small business, you talk to, Main Street customers, that's who we're dealing with these things. The big ones with the CFOs, they have access to all that information. But, when you're talking about a loan for $25,000, $30,000, I just think it should be like a de minimis. If it's under $100,000, for instance, just put it out there. I mean, you guys all know, I think, or I believe the universal sentiment was, let's pump this money into the economy. Let's keep people employed. Instead of writing checks, just, checks to businesses, this was the mechanism. But with all due respect, the federal government got into it and bureaucratized the heck out of it, in my opinion. So just anything you can do to make that easier for my customers and my employees too, but particularly for my customers and your constituents would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
No, thank you, Wally. And I agree with you 100%. We should make forgiveness easy. We should not make it hard. We shouldn't have to make people who, in good faith and desperate, applied for and received this funding. We're trying to keep the whole economy afloat. We're trying to keep all these individual small businesses afloat so they can come out on the other side. We could lose a very high percentage of our small businesses in America, especially the smallest of the small businesses that just don't have the capability to stay alive over this longer period of time. So I'm with you, Wally, 100%. Forgiveness should be easy, and I'm going to have my state director, Jim Cantwell, give you a call so that we can work with you, especially in your constituency right there, and anyone else that's on this call with this process. But I'm taking your advice very much to heart. That I'm on the Small Business Committee, and I'm going to work to make sure that we simplify this process.
That means a lot. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Sharon with the 228 in Sterling.
We are an event facility, and we are trying to put our opening plan together. We are just concerned if we put our have all of our guests assembled. We are wondering what would happen if after the event we found out that someone was COVID positive. As an event facility, we would be, our reopening plan includes that we are contact tracing. We're collecting information on all of our attendees, our vendors, our employees, all of our vendors that are attending, all of our guests, the bride and groom, everyone. And then we would also be, potentially temperature and all of that. So as the facility, our question is afterwards, if we find out through the Board of Health or the contact tracing authorities that someone is positive after we have done our due diligence, where's the liability there?
Those are good questions. We first have to make sure you have the contact tracing, capability, the testing capability. We have to make sure that there's personal protective equipment that is also available. A lot of this is going to be, a part of the continued scaling up of that capacity. I asked President Trump 3 months ago to invoke the Defense Production Act so that we would have the mass production of all of those things that would ultimately be essential to making sure that we could reopen safely, and that if necessary, if there was an incident, that we could do the contact tracing on a massive basis. I know the governor has worked very hard to scale up the contact tracing. But in terms of this liability issue, it's a variation of what Lillian already raised, and so it's going to be an issue that I'm going to now study very hard to find out what the parameters could be in resolving that issue. But it's clearly an important issue. It's come up twice out of 4 questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just had a question for the senator. What's it like campaigning in the time of COVID, where you're not able to shake hands and meet voters, and how are you overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, thank you, Jason, very much. we are the 100 most gregarious people in the United States. Our business is premised on shaking hands and smiling, just like where you are right now. I'm sure your business has the same premise. So yeah, so now, although, you know, I spent my whole career over at JetBlue and American, flying back and forth weekend after weekend, thousands of times I've flown back and forth between Washington and Boston. Now I drive down 7 hours on a Monday or Tuesday, and then drive back on Friday. That's the new world in which we are living, and even when we're down there in voting, we all wear masks. They leave the Senate chamber open so that when we go in and out, we don't have to touch any door handles. We can, in committee hearings, we can either be there in person or we can ask the witnesses questions over Zoom. It's all set up to do that. So there's been a fundamental change in the Senate. And in terms of campaigning, it has to be by Zoom. It has to be remote. It has to be a situation where you're not shaking hands, where people are wearing masks, where there is self-distancing. You just have to be careful. You know, the Democratic State Convention was supposed to happen later on this week, and I had worked very hard to actually win twice as many of the delegates as my opponent, but we're not going to have that convention. It's just not going to happen. You can't put 5,000 people right now in a convention hall. So for all of this, you have to move from face to face to kind of person to person, although in a way this still is face to face, and people have made the adjustment to this new world of Zoom. So I do this 5, 6, 7 times a day, you know, just talking to people across the Commonwealth, having conversations with them, and actually, in a way, it's actually more efficient. Right? There's no driving to the Nashoba Valley and then over to Springfield, or whatever, which I can now actually put in more events in the course of a day than I could if I had to be in a car. Massachusetts looks very small when you're flying over it, but it's a long drive from Malden, where I am right now, in my dining room, all the way out to Pittsfield. That's a long haul. So the adjustment is one that is going to have to be, you know, the way in which we operate for a while, and hopefully we'll return quickly. No one wants to do that more than a politician in a campaign. I would love to be out there and shaking hands en masse right now, but it won't happen for a while. And so from my perspective, the Senate has changed. Mitch McConnell won't allow us to vote remotely, but the same thing is true up here. And one of the things we're going to have to do is move to a much more simple way for people to vote by mail. There's going to be a lot of people who will not want to go out, especially seniors, and to be in a situation where they're in lines with a lot of people. So many seniors won't want to do that. So we have to make it a lot easier for people to vote by mail. For those who want to vote in person, they should be allowed to do so. But we're going to need to do that. And remember, even on that issue, the average age of death in Massachusetts, about 6,400 people have passed away. The average age of death is 82 years of age. It's 82. So there's going to be a natural apprehension on the part of seniors, and we're going to have to just absolutely make it easy for them to be able to vote, but also harder for me as a politician campaigning to kind of meet them at the same time. They're justifiably, more apprehensive about being out in public, and we want them to abide by all of the strongest public health safeguards that have been put out there. So I'm adjusting to it, and I will just continue to campaign, and ultimately the whole world is changing to this mode, as you are, and I thank you for actually allowing me to be here with you today.
Great. Our next question is from Jeremiah Reardon. He is with the Center for Business and Industry at Worcester State University.
morning, Senator, and thank you very much for being here. Jeremiah Reardon from Worcester State. Thank you, Melissa. My question is, in the new economy, your institutions of higher education, we're appreciative of the money that has already been released, but a lot of that money is going to go towards our academic programs for credit support, keeping our students in their programs going towards graduation, and the future workforce. My question is more about the immediate needs. Back during the 2008-2009 recession, Mount Wachusett Community College was very successful in getting a very large grant from the TACT program to help a lot of manufacturers upskill their employees. In the new economy, in a post-COVID economy, we're going to be faced with a lot of new challenges that we've never seen before, the workforce has never seen before, and our employers don't have the money to pay for training that is going to help their employees upskill themselves to get ready for success and help their businesses operate better, faster, more affordable during challenging times. My question is there anything in the pipeline coming towards us for Worcester State, for Quinsigamond, for Mount Wachusett to be able to take advantage of and get their training for free to the employers who need it and the employees and the incumbent workforce who are now looking for? And it has to be immediate training. It can't be a 2-year, 4-year program. We're talking about something 3 months to 2 weeks.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeremiah, very much for that question. Yeah, we're heading into something that we haven't seen since the Great Depression, and we're going to, in many of the jobs which exist right now, just won't be there when we come out of this. And so we're going to have to finance out of the federal government the community colleges, other institutions, so that they can help to provide the job training for people. They can provide the skill sets which people are going to need to work in this new economy that is going to be created as we come out of this old economy. And that's why we put in a lot of money that the community colleges could qualify for in the first round, and why we want to put in even more money going forward. And again, this is all being contested. Obviously, Mitch McConnell doesn't want to really even begin to negotiate over what the parameters of a much larger next phase package has to look like. But at the center of it has to be job training. We're going to quickly have a public health crisis be eclipsed by the economic depression that we're heading into. And ultimately, our educational system is going to have to play a big role in providing the job training, the skill set for people. And I think we should fund it. And I think we should fund it big time. My father graduated from Lawrence High School in 1929. Not a good year to be graduating from high school. The Lawrence Bank went under in 1930 with all the Markey family money. The treasurer of the Markey family from on the first floor of a triple-decker at 88 Phillip Street in South Lawrence. And that was a tough decade for people. Very tough decade for people. And for the first 3 or 4 years, Herbert Hoover refused to provide any real federal assistance. Well, for so many of the community colleges, other educational institutions, they're going to be the cornerstones for the rebuilding, and they're going to need resources. And that's a big part of what we're going to be debating, that we're going to be fighting over in Washington for this next package and for subsequent packages of economic relief. I just think that we have to go big, and we'll figure out how to pay it back in the long run. But if we don't do it now, the hole's going to get unbelievably deep. And the more we spend now you should always try to start out where you're going to be forced to wind up anyway. Now, Roosevelt only took the steps beginning in 1933 that should have been taken a lot earlier. I think that's going to be true here for the job training, the education that people are going to need to retool for what happens as we come out of this, and so many jobs are lost, but so many new jobs start to get created. So I agree with you, Jeremiah, and maybe you can give me a comment if you'd like on what I just said, and love to hear your view.
So, well, thank you very much, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, there's I've seen it happen before. I've been in the field long enough that a lot of the weight, we want to give out as much training as we can for free. That would be wonderful if we could do it, but we have operational costs we have to cover. But at the same time, we know the businesses all need workers that are as skilled as those that are in China. We're doing businesses, you have to be lean, you have to be into Six Sigma, you have to be into ISO. So our businesses are doing an awful lot of work, training themselves, trying to keep up with the latest trends, trying to keep up with the latest equipment that's coming out. But a lot of times the equipment that they're purchasing might be the least costly investment for them to get into. It's how to use the equipment and how to be planning for 3, 5, 10, 15 years out. So I appreciate that. And that 2008 TACT 1, TACT 2, TACT 3, Massachusetts was very involved in that. And we took advantage of a lot of fantastic training opportunities for our workers. We train a lot of individuals in manufacturing, a lot of people in healthcare. And that's fantastic. But I work every day with industries that are outside those two industries, and they need support also. So that's why I was looking for a line of hope, saying, okay, the training could be there. Yes, education, we'll keep doing that because that's what we're really good at. We're really good at training too. But we all know training costs an enormous amount of money.
And I think the federal government's going to have to pick up a big chunk of the tab so that young people or now older workers who are going to be, trying to get a new skill set can access it at a very inexpensive rate so that they can get back out into the workforce quickly. So thank you, Jeremiah. Much appreciated.
One of my favorite quotes, Senator Markey, is when the CFO says, "What if we train everybody and then they go off and get jobs elsewhere?" And the president comes back and says, "What if we don't and they stay?" I think that's a great point. But I always try to get across to businesses that it's not an expense; it's an investment. And I hope our government sees it the same way.
I'm with you, Jeremiah, and I'm going to fight to make that the case. Thank you.
We're going to wrap on that question. It was a perfect question to wrap this on.
Yeah, well, anyway, thank you, Melissa. Thanks for inviting me on here. Thank you to Matt for helping to organize this. And to Wally, thank you for hosting us. Thank you for providing the resources. And by the way, Wally, thank you for all the good work you did in helping 500 small businesses get the loans they needed to stay afloat. That's absolutely indispensable. And for anyone who is out there, through Melissa, or through Wally, or through Matt Keswick, if you have a question or a concern and my Senate office can help you, please let me know. We know that there are a lot of people who still have a lot of questions, and if we can potentially help you, let me know. On peak days, we received upwards of 700 calls, so we know it's there. But if you go through Melissa, will kind of give you a shortcut in, and we'll make sure that our top staffers work on any of the issues that any of you may have. So I thank you for the opportunity to be with you. I work hard every single day to provide leadership for the state of Massachusetts, for our economy, and we were just doing absolutely great until this pandemic broke out. And my goal will be help us to get out of this as quickly as is possible, and that will just mean putting the resources in so that people have consumer confidence that they can get back out into the marketplace again. So thank you all so much, and again, if I can be helpful, just give a call through Melissa, and we'll reach back out and try to help you. Thank you.